analysed our stats and crunched the numbers, and we're now ready to share with you what delights and frustrates your members and what this means for customer loyalty. My name is James, I'm a marketing executive here at TRP, and I'll be facilitating today's session. Your presenter is TRP retention coach Craig McIntyre. Craig's role at TRP means that he's very active within the industry, travelling the length and breadth of the country to work with our customers and help them deliver exceptional experiences for their members. He's a true fitness industry purist with the qualifications to prove it, and has been working in health and fitness for over 15 years now. Before we begin today's session and I hand you over to Craig, I'd just like to check that everyone can hear me and also see the title slide here on your screen. Just to check the audio, we've developed a fun way, well, we think at least, of doing this is just to ask you to locate the question box, which should be in the control panel on, I think, the right hand side of your screen, and just pop in there whereabouts in the world you're joining us from today. So just a bit of fun that only Craig and I will see, so we can just see how international our audience is. I'm broadcasting from Bath in the southwest of England, which is where the head office is located, and Craig is joining us today from Lincolnshire in the northeast of England. We like to make these sessions as interactive as possible. They're put on for you, so we want you to get the absolute most out of them. So feel free to ask any questions, again using that question box during the session. What I'll do is I'll work in the background to collect those questions. We'll leave Craig to keep his flow going, and at the end of the session we'll open the floor. Craig and I will talk through any questions that have already come in, and we'll also welcome any more that arise out of those. Any technical difficulties that you do have, please try and let me know via the question box again, and I'll do my very best to resolve any of those for you should they arise. So, without further ado, let's begin, and I'll pass you over to Craig.
Hi everybody. So let's start off. What delights and frustrates your members, and what does that mean for customer loyalty? And now my computer stopped working. There we go. Cool. Okay. So as James said, I'm Craig. I've been working for TRP for the last 2.5 years, and just wanted to start off with talking about what matters to customers. So we know, or sometimes we think we know, what is important to our customers, but sometimes we are too scared to ask the questions because we've got a perceived opinion of what they might tell us. So sometimes burying our head in the sand seems like an easier option than asking the question. Or if we do ask, sometimes we're actually either scared or we don't actually try and really action the results that we do get and get that information that we need to action. So many clubs already have tools that can let them understand the issues that their customers perceive to have within their facilities. And I think James has set up a poll on this webinar as well. So if you'd like to take part in the poll, just to let us know if you are using an MPS system or not. So as you can see on the screen at the moment, here's some great examples of positive, negative, and in between comments that have been submitted by customers like yours in the last month. So really, we have to realign our businesses from the traditional perception that we provide facilities for people to come and use, and really change that to destinations where people want to be part of the movement that you guys are developing. So as a little bit of an introduction to what we're doing, what the research was all about. So previously we have shared research with you on club uplifts and hassles, and if you haven't ever seen that, feel free to go onto the website and you can download that white paper. So we surveyed over 10,000 people, we used a wide range of health clubs, and we had access to the demographic information and the membership information, so we understood lots about these members. And as you can see from the screen, in the survey we put together, we highlighted, say, like 9 key club uplifts, and we measured how frequent and how enjoyable those uplifts were. So we collected that data, so we had an idea of how often those things happened and how important they were to the members. And then we also looked at club hassles. So there was 10 club hassles, and again we looked at how frequent and how annoying they were. And the same for hassles, how frequent and how important they were to the member. And when we carried out the thorough analysis, we looked to control the key differences. So this is essential for us to draw some safe conclusions. So poor analysis often ignores this, so it ends up drawing erroneous conclusions, simply because the factors in the underlying data had nothing at all to do with the experimental questions that you might have posed. So just like recapping on that previous research, just really some of the key things that came out. So we're not going to spend too much time recapping on this information, but in essence what we really just wanted to remind you of was the fact that you can improve customer cancellation rates by focusing on hassles and uplifts. So making sure some of these things happen more often, while some things happen less often. And as we can see from here, this was looking at things that were hassles to customers. So it's also worthwhile us pointing out about the different types of analysis, because it's also difficult for many organisations to look at this sort of stuff regularly. But we need to understand if there is or there are ways that we can uncover what's happening on a daily basis that makes it easier to assess rather than using cancellation rates per 1,000 customers, which is really, really difficult to do. So today, in my eyes, is all about helping you change the expectations of your customers. And the Kano model, which you can see on the screen now, explains that different aspects of any service have different effects on user satisfaction. So some service characteristics called basics or must-haves are expected and lead to dissatisfaction with a service if they're not present. So for instance, if we were talking about a different industry, say we were talking about hotels, this would be like a clean room, hot or cold water, and a door that locks. So their presence does not lead to satisfaction, but these features are expected, so more or less is better. So the features deliver satisfaction according to the amount of the features that are present. So in that hotel service, this might be the time it takes to check in, the price, the range of items on the menu, etc. And these variables can lead to dissatisfaction or satisfaction depending on the level that they receive. And on the flip side, we have delighters, and delighters aren't expected, and therefore they don't result in dissatisfaction from the service when they're not present. But when they are present, they lead to delight or high levels of satisfaction. And in that hotel service example that we've given already, this might be, say, like a free ride into town, some free like theatre tickets, maybe a free massage in the hotel spa. But if you go back and think about that list I just showed you for our hassles and uplifts, some of those items on our list of hassles can very easily fall into those baseline expectation categories. And also the uplifts from our categories, they were in no way extravagant as a free taxi home or free theatre tickets, and they are more easily delivered, and typically they would not cost your business anything other than probably a little bit of time and effort. So much of the presentation we're going to focus on is about NPS. So it's pretty widely known, but it's worth just a quick recap. So Fred Reichheld and the team at Bain & Co came up with NPS. They've written some books which we can see on the screen. And if you read those books and you know anything about NPS, lots of research, lots of questions about what's the most effective way at identifying profitable growth. And the ultimate question from which NPS was born is the question that we've got on the screen now. So yeah, how likely is it that you would recommend, and then you pop in your business name in there, to a friend or a colleague? And it gets called the ultimate question, but the there is a follow-up question on there, and the key thing with the follow-up question is that follow-up question is really trying to find out the why of the person who's responding. And the scores are calculated, and it's a pretty easy way of calculating the score. So you just take the promoter percentage and you subtract the detractor percentage, and that gives you your NPS score. So these are very different to like long annual surveys. You might get those once a year, and sometimes they're quite often just too late because you don't remember the exact detail of the issue you might have. So stereotypically, you might just be given some replies that's a bit just like, yeah, it's good, it's bad, it's indifferent, but you can't remember anything specifically. Whereas NPS makes our customer feedback specific and timely, letting you keep on top of the issues, and more importantly, it gives your customer that ability to comment on your service topics that matter most to them in that free text box at the end. So it's really, ultimately, I think what NPS helps with, it helps you to start to create a real army of salespeople through trying to create raving fans. And having an army of salespeople then leads on to more referrals leads on to more sales to more visits to more concessionary spend. Then we've got more profit, and if we've got more profit, we have more investment. But ultimately, it's really being driven by those raving fans. And I worked with a UK operator recently, and they termed return visits in this way. So adding an additional visit adds the potential for 1 extra sports drink sale per person per visit. And I'm sure that most of you could, for most of you, this could add up to a real significant amount of income and happy customers who are attending on a regular basis. So our new research. So we're going to ask and answer 4 questions. We had asked the questions about hassles and uplifts, as we said before, but we also asked the NPS question at the same time with those 10,000 customers. And the questions that we asked was, does NPS make a difference? What makes somebody a promoter? What makes somebody a detractor? And how do you influence people to be promoters and detractors? And as we said before, we surveyed those 10,000 people. We analysed those underlying differences, such as scores for ages, gender, length of membership, etc. And we controlled for these factors, so you're only seeing the real impact of our findings. So, does NPS make a difference? So, with all that done, we could proceed to the first question. So, does NPS make a difference? So, it's been proved multiple times by multiple people in multiple industries that promoters buy more, stay longer, refer more friends, and we know this. So, and even Fred Reichheld himself says, test it out before you use it yourself. And we've done this many times, and we've shown that promoters attend more, regardless of visit frequency before the survey. And we've also shown that promoters stay longer. And just to make sure, we can do this again, and we'll show you this now. So this is a survival curve, and what we can see from a survival curve, you've got the axis along the bottom. That's how many months people are staying for, and we've got the axis going up the side. That's the proportion of members that we've got left. So everybody starts at the very top, 100%, and on month 0. And what you're really looking for is you're looking for, ideally, these lines to be flat, so it was staying at 100% the whole time. But we do have customers that leave, and the steeper the drop on this survival curve, the quicker those members are leaving. And as we can see from the graph on here, the steepest curve that we can see is our red line, so our detractors. The next is then our passives, and the least steep is our promoters. So it shows that our promoters are staying longer compared to our passives and our detractors. So our second question, what makes somebody a promoter? So to answer this, we grouped the hassles and uplifts into levels. So we were looking at no, 0, 1, 2, and 3 plus. And we looked at how they were related to the NPS category. So this allows us to produce these results. So we're going to start off with, we're going to just look at the promoters. And quite decisively, as the uplifts increase, so does the chance of being a promoter. So we can see with no uplifts, we've got 40%, and with 3 or more uplifts, 62% people are a promoter. And the opposite is true when we look at hassles. So as the hassles increase, the chance of being a promoter dramatically decreases. So an alternative way of looking at this is an odds ratio. So here we anchor the graph, so 1 is on no uplifts. And then we look to see what happens as we add more uplifts in there. So one uplift was a bit of a statistical anomaly, but if you look at 2 and 3, we can see that 2 uplifts has a 27% increase in the probability of being a promoter, whereas 3 uplifts has a 126% probability, so more than double, so more likely to be a promoter. So really, really positive. And then this slide, so we're looking at the reverse. So when we look at the hassles here, the anchor point is no hassles. So again, we're anchoring that no hassles column at 1. And we can see with 1 hassle, that halves the chance of being a promoter. When we have 2, it cuts it down by 2/3. And if we have 3 hassles, the likelihood of being a promoter is now just 1/5. So you can't argue that if you increase the uplifts and decrease the hassles, you will increase the percentage of promoters. So every which way you look at this, you can take control of what is happening to your customers. So our third question, what makes someone a detractor? So we're revisiting those first 2 tables, but this time we're focusing on the opposite end of the spectrum here. So yeah, this time we're just going to look at the detractors. So the more uplifts we can see on here, the less likely our customers are to be detractors. And again, when we look at the hassles, the more hassles that are reported, this increases the probability of customers being a detractor. And the same as before, we're going to have a quick look at that scaling. So again, this anchor point is 1, but this time this one is for no uplifts. So as we increase the number of uplifts, we dramatically decrease the chance of being a detractor. Let me just slide back there when. So yeah, so 3 or more uplifts reduces this by 2/3. Sorry. And then final one of these. So again, we're revisiting this odds ratio. So now we're showing the odds ratio for being a detractor again. So again, the anchor point is 1 and no hassles. And as we increase the number of hassles, we dramatically increase the chance of being a detractor. So this time we see the biggest changes of all. So someone with 3 or more hassles is nearly 10 times more likely to be a detractor. So we added in a bonus question here as well. So we've combined some of these things together. So because we were sure that you guys are probably thinking the same as us. So people stereotypically don't just experience uplifts or just hassles. So how do you combine them and what effect does this have? So we can see again from the odds ratio of being a promoter, with the anchor point being no hassles and no uplifts. So along the bottom axis, you can see we have the number of uplifts, and each coloured bar represents the number of hassles. We can see very clearly that the odds of being a promoter are higher the more uplifts you have. but each group is eroded by more hassles you experience. So blues are always highest, then red, then green, and then purple's the lowest. So if we look furthest right, even if you have 3 uplifts, but you also have 3 hassles, you're 60% less likely to be a promoter. So on this graph, we have the same groups and columns, but this time we look at the odds ratio of being a detractor. So we can see the pattern that I'm sure you would expect by now. As we move more left to right, adding more uplifts, the chance of being a detractor reduce. But in each group, the more hassles you add, the more chances you do have of being a detractor. Again, focus on the extremes. The furthest purple column on the right, 3 or more uplifts, but even with that, when you have 3 hassles, you are more than 3 times likely to be a detractor when you have no hassle, if you're comparing that to no hassles and no uplifts. So we've established without a shadow of a doubt that if you want to drive your NPS score and benefit from the increased retention, referral and sales this brings, reduced hassles and increased uplifts. But this brings us to our final question. How do you influence people to be promoters or detractors? So far, our analysis has been looking at the combination of hassles and uplifts, and these are combined. So we identified that the more you have, the bigger the effect. What we also did was look at the individual hassles and uplifts that had the most effect when experienced alone. So this graph shows that only uplifts and hassles that were statistically significant and independent of all other uplifts and hassles. And we're showing them against the chance of being a promoter. And again, the value of instances is benchmarked at 1, so no difference in the odds of being a promoter in members who report the presence of a particular uplift or hassle compared to members who do not report it. So the greater than 1 means the odds of being a promoter increase, and a value less than 1 means the odds of being a promoter decrease. And therefore, we have 3 independent uplifts that increase the chance of being a promoter, and they were learning a new piece of equipment, fitness staff speaking to members, and fitness staff encouraging members. But by contrast, we also have 6 hassles that are independently associated with reducing the likelihood of being a promoter, and they're ranked in order as you can see on the screen. So final question. So using the same methodology, we want to now look at the hassles and uplifts that are most associated with being a detractor. Again, only showing those that act independently and that have a statistically significant effect. The odds of being a detractor are strongly linked to the presence of 6 hassles that are ranked in order. So dirty changing facilities increase the risk of being a detractor by a factor of 3.24. Because the hassles are independent of each other, they are also cumulative. Only 1 uplift reduces the risk of being a detractor on its own and controlling for all other factors. And by 34%, that was completing a challenge and workout. So to summarize that all together, if we're looking at maximizing uplifts, we really need to focus on offering encouragement to the customers. We need to try and make sure our customers have challenging workouts. Ultimately, we're always trying to drive repeat visits. That should really be always the focus of any conversation or any work that we're doing with our customers. And also introducing new pieces of equipment would be beneficial. And minimizing hassles, we should really be focusing on exceptional cleanliness, making sure we have good maintenance schedules, both for things like fitness equipment, but right the way around our facilities. Adding equipment or changing equipment if there's risk of queues, risk of lines, around the kit, or putting things in place to minimise the chance of having queues, exercise sessions, etc. And ultimately trying to make sure that we don't cancel classes. And this really ties in with Brilliant Basics. And the final thought from us on this was really looking at the scale of the opportunity that we have. And two numbers really stand out. First one was 45% of these 10,000 people reported no uplifts whatsoever, which is an absolutely massive figure. Yet on the flip side, we had 49% of these 10,000 reported having at least one hassle. So we've got a great opportunity to be able to try and change some of these things. And like many operators, I think we're all facing lots of competition these days. And I take my local leisure centre, where I take my son swimming. So I've had the feedback from the guys there. They tell me that a couple of years ago, they only had 2 clubs in their area for competition that were, 2 clubs that were close enough to compete. And then now they have 22. So this puts huge pressure on sales and retention, and they have to stay ahead. So we see this a lot, and for so many operators, it simply becomes a race to the bottom. Now, for those in the coalface, it may not feel like this, but looking from the outside and reviewing the data the way that we can see it, lots of people start to really focus on competing on price. And competing on price means that you need to save on costs. Saving on costs means service is lost. Service loss means it's harder to sell and retain, which in turn means less revenue. And less revenue means we need to make more sales, so we cut prices further. And this isn't a cycle with no net change. It's a spiral that just keeps going down and down. And each time you have to cut a little bit more investment further. And it's not something that stereotypically you find that bounces back. This is a quote that we really, really like. So you drive for show, but you put for dough. So when it comes to NPS, knowing your score is okay. For some, it's a reality check, maybe a rude awakening, or maybe even a bit of an embarrassment. For others, it's a pat on the back, a credit to you, and a bit of an ego trip. But in reality, the score on its own is a lot less important than you may think. What is important is you moving the score. From wherever you're starting, you must understand what people are saying, what is driving your score, and act upon those and put those things right. So we've got some great case studies, and I'm going to share some snippets of these with you guys, and we do have some case studies that are attached into the handout section today, so feel free to download them. So sometimes with a net promoter system or feedback systems, it's all about automating those surveys, making it steady, making it consistent, and consistently getting their responses. So Ken Brown, one of our friends at Fitness Incentive in North America, stresses how automating the process is critical. So this is not just some big annual survey that guarantees a report that sits and gathers dust and changes nothing. I think those days have gone, and this has been replaced by a steady stream of surveys going out every day, and this means we get a steady stream coming back in daily as well. So for the guys at the Fitness Incentive, anywhere between 3 and 10 responses each day. And this means critically going through these, reviewing them every day, following up as required, and tracking and understanding the trends and identifying any needs straight away. So at Fitness Incentive, it's all about the survey responses automatically emailed around to the whole team, and they share the scores and the feedback with the team, all the feedback, both good and bad. And everyone gets a chance to share in the success, but everyone is aware of detractors. One person in that business coordinates the feedback and responds to about 80% of the survey, but the other 20% are delegated to the most relevant team member. So for example, fitness issues go to the fitness director, comments about personal training to the personal training director. And these people may be more involved in the issue, more able to put it right, or may simply have a better relationship with that member. Ultimately, the owners oversee all the responses and can step in personally if required. So if we're focusing on our promoters, closing the loop, we should be reading them, sharing them, and really celebrating that success. Sometimes our promoters might say some negative things, so things like "I love the club, but," and we need to keep that focus on the promoters to make sure that they will be identifying issues before they become a bigger issue. So make sure we keep on top of those. So we can also really use them and look at them to see them as like a growing army of salespeople. So use their feedback in things like social media, testimonials, etc. So we want to share things like, share comments on social media, quote members for feedback on that social media, maybe providing, so like vouchers, coupons, for them to bring a friend along. They're the types of customers you want. You want your Raven fans, you want people like your Raven fans. They'll have friends and family members that have got similar values to those. Really helps you identify potential people for upsales. And it really gives you like a methodology for targeting specific customers. For our passives, it's important to close the loop also. They're not as loyal as our Raven fans, as our promoters, but they could become that if you listen and react to their feedback. So acknowledge the feedback and then seek to improve on it. And our friends at SIV, so Sheffield International Venues in the UK, have a great way of dealing with passives. So everyone who is a passive is contacted by the management and offered a place on the mystery shopper program. So the member can then fill in more detailed feedback about the next visit, and they have a direct line then back to the manager, and they start to feel that they can see the results that they're giving back, and makes them feel part of what SIV are trying to do. And SIV have reported a 1,500% increase in the people on the mystery shopper program, giving them feedback on a regular basis and converting those passives into promoters. And for our detractors, this is where the system really shows some benefit. So someone should follow up. So not only that, but the person that is following up should be the person that can really make a difference. So the example we gave you earlier on at Fitness Incentive, that quite often is Ken. But at most clubs that we work with, it tends to be that the general manager is the person that does the NPS, specifically detractor feedback, because they're definitely the ones that can make a real big difference. And I've also got a customer that I work with in the UK, Blackburn and Darwin, and they treat their NPS and their detractors particularly as an early warning system. And it really helps them identify what's coming down the track that might cause issues. So one or two members starting to raise concerns means much broader discontent is likely to follow. So if one or two members are unhappy about something, it's likely to be that many more are unhappy and just silently saying nothing. Equally important are the rumblings of what a competitor is doing. So comments along the lines of "at my friend's gym" or "at the gym down the road" can be a sign of competitive pressures that can be addressed early. So the whole system ties together to let these partners identify the strategic decisions they need to make to improve their business, and then ultimately help and generate more sales, great loyalty, and more customer referrals. So for those clubs that are using Insight NPS currently, I would suggest some easy steps that you could implement now. First one would be to make sure that you're doing things like reweighting the words that are submitted. So to make sure it's reflecting correctly the feedback that your customers are giving you, and then you can use that strategically going forward. And as we can see in the example here, Wendy Walsh has submitted the comment above, and this is how it would come through initially, but we've needed to make sure that we re-weight that word dirty, because even though she's a Raven fan, she's a 9, she loves it. The sauna was superb, there was a dirty towel line around, so we changed that word dirty to make sure that that's reflected correctly in the reporting suite later on. It's also really good to understand those hassles and uplifts, or the hassles and uplifts that your customers might be experiencing. So use the follow-up questions to ask what is good and what could be improved. So I've got the example of one of the survey questions here, and then the follow-up question that you could have for, say, like a detractor. So what one thing could we do to improve your experience? But even for our Raven fans, wow, you liked it. What can we do to improve your experience further? It's keeping you on top of that. And then finally, make sure you build the themes that you want to report on, and get your teams to ensure comments are tagged into these groups accordingly. So reporting is especially important to understand those trends and being able to action them sooner rather than later. So just tying that all together, I think hopefully you can see it's definitely important to implement a system like MPS, but definitely an automated feedback system for your customers. Ultimately, you have to try and bring it to life, but ultimately you have to live it and breathe it. It's not just about switching it on, getting a score and getting a little bit of feedback. You need to do something with that feedback. You need to show your customers that you do value what the feedback that they're giving to you, and if they see that you value it, they're much more likely to give you that feedback. Living and breathing it makes it a much more long-term commitment. It's definitely a marathon and not a sprint, but it's going to give you some really real powerful and insightful information as we go through. And ultimately, all of this stuff is really going to help us avoid that race to the bottom, and it's going to help us develop this loop again. So those army of salespeople, more referrals, more sales, more visits, more income through that secondary spends, which gives you profit, investment, and ultimately it's really helping you build that group of Raven fans. So that's our presentation for today. I'm not sure if you guys have been posting questions as we go through, but feel free to go to the questions box and pose any questions to either myself or James.
Yeah, thanks, Craig, and yeah, so I think I speak on behalf of everyone. Just thanks for that information. All very interesting stuff, particularly the application to the real world, which is always fascinating for me, especially. We have slightly overrun our advertised time, so you've got a little bit of extra free value out of us there, but we're more than happy to stay on, Craig and I, and talk through your questions, and I can see some flying in as we speak. Our first one came in from Craig whilst Craig was presenting. Craig was just asking about targeting promoters for referrals, Craig, and whether you would kind of unashamedly reach out to them and ask for referrals, or whether that would be too aggressive a technique. What would your recommendation be?
I definitely wouldn't be shy. Yeah, I mean, you maybe don't want to make it so obvious that the only reason that you're asking them for a referral is because they're a promoter. So you might want to leave it, say, like a week or two before you ask for that. But I would definitely have no shame in either emailing them and offering them guest passes, or giving them a phone, or speaking to them in the club. That would definitely be something I'd advise you do. Yeah,
and I think that was picked up on that system slide, wasn't it? Where that an incentive of refer a friend, a voucher kind of thing, kind of does the job for you without being too obvious about what you're doing, and it adds value to them and makes them feel like they can add value to someone else as well.
Definitely.
So I think that would be a
I've
good
got
approach.
some customers that they use our MPS system obviously, and what they do is they do a follow-up email, say like a couple of weeks down the line, and they just say like put say like a hyperlink in there to a web page on their website, but you just have it that you can't navigate to it, just conventionally you can't navigate through the website.
Hmm.
But then they understand how many people have come from referrals from their MPS system, because they can see their hit rate on their website.
Okay, great. Other questions. Question from Kevin, just asking. I'm not sure whether we have this information to hand, but what percentage of respondents add a comment to their NPS score?
Good question, and that's probably one I don't know as well. I know that stereotypically, I think that a good feedback percentage, well, a good score feedback percentage is around about 25%. Not 100% sure on actual comments.
Yeah,
I think we might need to get back to Kevin on that one.
so that's 25% of people that receive an NPS survey in
Yeah,
general will respond to it,
yeah,
and that's dramatically higher, is my understanding, than a traditional form of survey.
yeah, no, definitely, yeah.
Off the top of my head, and for obvious reasons. I mean, it is one simple question. It does what it says on the tin. I don't know. I don't know when the last time I filled out anything that was more than 3 questions. So NPS does have a higher response rate in general. From experience, we NPS ourselves, don't we, Craig? We NPS our customers, and I think we get a good amount that come through with comments. It's and But some that don't. So yeah, it's difficult to say, but yeah, Kevin, as Craig said, we can look into that for you a bit and see if we can find out and get back to you.
I think even if they don't give you a comment, it gives you an in. It gives you a reason to just give them a call or speak to them when they're in the club, and speak to them. It's like, thanks very much for giving us the feedback. Just wanted to see if you could just elaborate a little bit more for me. Tell me what's good. Tell me what's bad. It's just it's an easy in really.
Yeah, that's a great point. Question from Gavin, just asking whether it's good to have a database, a collection of the complaints and issues in the gym or club, I guess for future reference, and to maybe build a business case for making changes.
Definitely. I mean, I think some of the case studies that we've got, I definitely know that some of the customers that I work with, yeah, that's how they change things sometimes. That is how they build that business base. I've got one just like a single site operator that I work with up in the northwest of England, and they use MPS to help them decide what they're gonna fix next, what they're gonna spend their money on, because they don't have a endless supply of cash, so they need to spend that money wisely, and they let the customers comment on. Yeah, the customers' comments dictate how they spend that money.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, that's got to be the best way to do it, because those are the people that are giving you the money to spend.
Exactly.
I know, particularly for trusts, I think there's an example of a trust who do that, who very much, as a trust, all that money that comes in, you're reinvesting back into the benefit of your community. So if you can let your community decide, then that's great. Then another one of the operators, I think, who works with one of our partners, updated their check-in system based on member feedback about queuing. So they went to contactless payment and booths, and they saw kind of an increase in the amount of money they were taking, because it was easier to control who was coming in and out, and that was obviously a significant investment that they made off their customer feedback.
Yeah, there's that active Activium. I think that's one of the handouts, isn't it, that you've got on this?
Yeah. Yeah, should be. Yeah, so as Craig said before, handouts that have got kind of longer forms of these examples that we're giving here today. Just reading through the last few questions. So Dan asks, how often should the NPS question be asked if it's not an annual thing?
I think really it's as often as your customers see value in it, really. I mean, stereotypically, we would normally suggest it's probably at least once every 4 months, for, say, like a standard relational questionnaire. it depends if you're getting really good response rates, then you might want to reduce that down a bit because you might have too many comments to deal with. But if you, yeah, I think as much feedback as you can get, the better, really. But stereotypically, I think the standard that we work with a lot of clubs are, yeah, the relational messages once every quarter. If you've got a tool that you can send other ones as well, then you might also overlay those on top of that.
And we do behaviour-based ones as well, don't we?
Yeah, we've got an attendance one, so it's triggered by I attend today, so I might get an NPS survey tomorrow, and also an interaction one. So if one of the, say, like the fitness team interact with somebody, then a survey asking them what would they refer a friend based on the conversation that they had with that member of the team.
But again, that would be limited, so you couldn't, if you went in every day for a week, you wouldn't get five.
Exactly. You can set it. You can set how many you want to send of those per year.
Okay, great. So a question from Fiona about she's saying that sometimes even the most loyal promoters will leave if a cheaper club opens. I'm just wondering what tips we had on that.
Yeah, I know where she's coming from with that. I think stereotypically, from a lot of the clubs that we work with, they do find that those types of customers do then end up coming back in the long run. But I think they probably leave because they do have some issues. So, I mean, if it does come down to money, then yeah, they aren't truly loyal, are they? But if you've been listening to them, it's obvious that they don't value what they're getting from you. So if you're really focused on and the clubs that we work with, I think stereotypically the feedback that they get is it's not the same when we go to the cheaper club down the road. Nobody speaks to us. There's no chatting amongst the customers, etc. It's just quite soulless. They go in, they do their workout, they leave, and then they stereotypically would come back to clubs because that's what they want. They want to have that interaction with the staff and the other customers. So it's maybe just making sure that the customers really do understand what you offer. Yeah, just keeping that again front and center. Maybe keep reminding them about the classes and the support programs that you've got, and maybe free programs that you write. And maybe it's for those promoters that you are offering them those added value, little perks every now and again that makes them realise that they do want to stay with you and not go off to the cheaper option down the road.
Yeah, I think that's a great point as well. I think we've had this discussion many times before about your offering can't be to absolutely everyone. I think you need to define what your offering is and then really strongly deliver that. So often, speaking to more traditional clubs, that won't be competing on price. So as long as your members value things other than price, that kind of helps to strengthen.
I mean, typically clubs promote. They have the new member journey right at the start of the program, and then they don't promote that you can have a free program every 3 months. They have it on their marketing material, but it's like once you've joined somewhere, how often do you pick up a new member leaflet and have a read through it and remind yourself about what you get as part of that membership? So it's maybe talking to the customers, making sure that you're emailing out on a regular basis to remind them about the added value things that they do get with you. Should be part of their journey. You just constantly be reminding them of what they're going to get to staying with you.
Okay, final question just in from Nick, just about the research. It's useful just to go over it. So the study itself, whether that came from traditional commercial clubs or were studios involved too.
Cool, no, good question. So it was a range of operators. So it was UK based. So we used local authorities, leisure trusts, single site operators, multi-site operators. I don't think we had select specifics like studio boutiques and I don't think we used any of them. Pretty sure if we did, we'll let you know. I think it was a bit more conventional leisure operators.
Okay, great. So if anyone else had a question that we didn't get a chance to answer today, please feel free to drop Craig an email speaking on his behalf, but he'd be more than happy, I'm sure, to pick up with you after the session. Equally, anything that you want to discuss in more detail. As it says on the bottom of this slide, we are almost ready with the written report. This really is hot off the press, so the pen hasn't left the paper of that written report yet. That's still being finalised, but as soon as that's ready, we'll make sure you'll all have that in hand, and also the recording of today's session as well. So you'll be fully equipped to send all this knowledge out to your teams.
Super.
Okay.
Well, thank you to everybody that attended today.